The starship drifted through the endless dark sky. Its metal body shined as it moved toward the royal station of the Zorith Empire. Inside the ship, soldiers of different alien races stood tall, wearing heavy armor and carrying shining weapons. Among them walked a human named Tom. Tom was not tall compared to the others. His shoulders were strong, but his height was small when matched against the towering alien guards. Still, his eyes showed calmness, and his steps were steady. He had traveled many light years to take on a new role, one that most humans would not even dare to dream of. When the ship docked, the great doors of the station opened. The air smelled sharp with energy fields, and the walls glowed with symbols of Zorith strength. Tom walked forward and saw the throne chamber ahead. The chamber was larger than any human hall, built for giants, with tall pillars and golden shields hanging high above. On the throne sat Princess Vera. She was nearly twice Tom's height, with silver skin that shimmered under the bright lights. Her eyes glowed like crystals, and her armor was carved with symbols of her royal line. Around her stood guards of her own kind, each one larger and heavier than Tom, their weapons humming with power. The royal herald announced in a deep voice, "Human Tom, assigned by the council, protector of Princess Vera." Tom stepped forward and bowed his head. He said with respect, "I am honored to serve." Princess Vera leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she studied the human standing before her. Her lips curved in a faint smile that was closer to a laugh. "You are too small to be my bodyguard, human," she said. Her voice carried across the hall, and the guards chuckled, their laughter echoing against the tall walls. Tom did not answer back. He only stood firm, his face calm. One guard spoke loudly, "Look at him, Princess. He looks fragile. A strong wind could break him." The others laughed harder. Princess Vera raised her hand to quiet them, but she still looked amused. She stepped down from her throne and walked close to Tom. Her shadow fell over him as she looked down, her tall figure making him seem even smaller. "Tell me, human," she said, "how can someone your size protect me when even our strongest warriors struggle to guard this throne?" Tom's voice was steady. "Protection does not always come from size. It comes from awareness, speed, and planning." Her eyes flashed with curiosity for a moment, but then she shook her head. "Words are easy. Action is harder." Tom replied, "Then I will show action when the time comes." The princess turned away and climbed back to her throne. She waved her hand, signaling that the audience was over. "Very well, human. Serve as you wish. But do not expect me to believe in your strength." The guards laughed again, but Tom did not show anger. Instead, he looked around the chamber, memorizing exits, noting shadows where enemies could hide, and marking the movements of the soldiers. To him, every laugh and every insult was only sound. His task was to keep the princess alive, no matter what she thought of him. Later that evening, Tom was taken to his small quarters near the royal wing. Unlike the grand rooms of the Zorith guards, his chamber was simple with only a bed, a desk, and a small view window that showed the dark sky filled with distant stars. He placed his small pack on the bed and sat down. Tom took out a metal book device and began to study the station layout. He learned the map, studied the hidden tunnels, and noted the weak points of the palace defense. His mind worked with speed, turning every detail into a plan. He knew one thing clearly. An attack would come. Royal blood was never safe in any empire. Outside his chamber, guards still laughed about him. Some even whispered that humans were only good for small tasks like cleaning or carrying supplies. But Tom was not there to argue with them. He was there for something bigger. That night, Princess Vera walked through the royal garden, her steps proud as she looked at the glowing trees and crystal fountains. 2 giant guards followed her, their heavy boots striking the ground. She noticed Tom watching quietly from the corner of the path. His hands were empty, but his eyes never stopped scanning the shadows of the garden. "Still awake, little human?" she asked. Tom answered simply, "A guard does not rest when danger may come." Vera smirked. "Danger does not enter my garden. This is the safest place in the Empire." Tom looked at the tall walls and the shadows between the glowing plants. "Safety ends the moment you believe it is complete," he said. The princess raised an eyebrow at his words. She almost wanted to argue, but something in his steady tone kept her silent. Instead, she turned and continued her walk. As Tom returned to his post, he remembered his training back on Earth. Humans had always been smaller than many species they encountered, but they had survived by learning, adapting, and refusing to give up. This mission would be no different. Far above the station, in the silent dark, a small group of enemy ships drifted closer, hidden by shadows of broken asteroids. Inside those ships, assassins prepared their weapons. Their goal was simple. Princess Vera must not live to lead her people. Tom did not know their exact plan yet, but he felt the coming storm. His instincts whispered that his real test was near. The next morning, the palace woke with the sound of drills. Alien guards trained in the great courtyard, their heavy blades striking against shields, their booming voices shouting commands. The air shook with their power. Tom stood at the edge of the yard, watching quietly. His small human frame looked almost invisible among the tall giants. The guards noticed him and began whispering to each other. One of them, a soldier named Crawl, stepped forward with a smirk. His armor was dark red, and his chest was as wide as 2 humans together. "So this is the human they brought to protect our princess," Crawl said loudly so others could hear. "He looks more like a servant than a warrior." Laughter rolled through the yard. Another guard shouted, "Maybe he can guard her teacup. That is more his size." Tom did not react. He only stood still, his hands resting behind his back. His calm face made the guards laugh even harder, for they thought silence meant weakness. From the balcony above, Princess Vera watched. She had not forgotten her first impression of Tom. To her, he was too small, too light, too soft to stand among warriors. She folded her arms and said to her advisor, "See how they mock him. I told you he could not fit into our ranks." The advisor, an older Zorath named Reelan, replied carefully, "Princess, the council requested his placement. They believe humans bring unusual skill." "Skill cannot replace strength," Vera answered. "When an enemy swings a blade, words and tricks do not stop it." Down below, Crawl grew bold. He picked up a training spear and walked toward Tom. "Human, show us how you fight," he said. His voice carried challenge and mockery at once. "If you are here to guard our princess, prove you can defend yourself." The crowd of soldiers cheered, eager to see the little human fail. Tom looked at Crawl, then at the spear. He spoke in a steady voice. "If I fight you now, I will lose. You are larger, stronger, and trained in your own way." The crowd roared with laughter. "He admits defeat before even starting," one guard shouted. But Tom did not look ashamed. Instead, he added, "That does not mean I cannot win in another way. A bodyguard's duty is not to show strength in open field, but to protect in shadows, to strike when the enemy does not expect, and to plan so the princess never needs to fight." Crawl frowned, confused by his words. The laughter slowed, though some guards still chuckled. They did not understand this human way of thinking. Princess Vera leaned forward on the balcony, her eyes narrowing. She was curious but unwilling to admit it. Tom gave a small bow to Crawl and stepped back. "Your strength is clear," he said. "But my role is different." Crawl shook his head, tossing the spear aside. "You are strange, human. I will not waste my time with you." He turned away, leaving Tom alone once more. The guards returned to training, but their whispers continued. Some called Tom a coward. Others said he was clever to avoid the fight. The doubt about his worth grew stronger, not only in their hearts but also in the princess's mind. That evening, Vera summoned Tom to her chamber. The room was filled with glowing crystals, their light soft and cold. She sat on a silver chair, her tall figure casting a long shadow across the floor. Tom stood before her, waiting. "You refused a challenge today," Vera said. Her voice was calm but firm. "Why?" Tom answered, "Because my duty is not to prove myself in a yard. My duty is to keep you safe from true danger. Fighting Crawl would show nothing. But if enemies come, then my actions will speak." Her eyes narrowed. "You speak with confidence, but your body is still small. My people respect strength, not words." "Strength takes many forms," Tom replied. "Your guards are shields of steel. I can be the unseen wall, the eyes that never close, the mind that sees danger before it strikes. Together, that is real protection." For the first time, Princess Vera did not laugh. She did not agree either, but she was silent, her crystal eyes watching him closely. After a pause, she said, "Very well, human. You may keep your post. But remember, if you fail me once, I will send you back to your world in shame." Tom bowed his head. "I will not fail." That night, while the princess slept in her royal chamber, Tom stayed awake. He walked the corridors, memorized guard patterns, and checked each door and window. His mind built a map of the palace, not just in walls but in risks. He noted where shadows fell too deep, where doors locked too weak, where guards grew careless. As he moved, he thought of Earth, where humans had always lived among stronger creatures. Lions were stronger, storms were greater, but humans had survived by thinking ahead, by planning, by refusing to surrender. Out here, among alien giants, nothing had changed. Far beyond the palace, in the dark of space, the enemy ships drew closer. Hidden behind broken asteroids, their crews studied the royal station. They marked the palace towers and whispered about their target. Princess Vera's life was their prize. Inside the palace, doubt still surrounded Tom. The guards saw him as weak. The princess saw him as small. Yet in his heart, he knew the storm was coming. The palace was quiet that night. The tall guards stood at their posts, their heavy armor glowing faintly under the crystal lights. Princess Vera rested in her royal chamber, her silver skin shining softly in the dim glow. To her, it was just another peaceful night. To Tom, it was not. His instincts told him danger was close. Tom walked slowly through the corridors, his eyes moving from shadow to shadow. He listened to the faint hum of the palace engines and the steady steps of the guards. But then he heard something else. It was a sound too soft for the heavy ears of the Zorith soldiers. A faint click, like metal against stone, coming from the outer wall. He froze and tilted his head. The sound came again. He stepped closer, pressing his hand against the wall. His human ears caught what the tall guards missed. The wall shook slightly, just enough for him to know intruders were trying to cut their way inside. Without a word, Tom moved quickly. He ran down a side corridor and climbed a service ladder, his small frame fitting easily through the narrow space. The alien guards would never fit here, but Tom's size gave him advantage. He reached a hidden vent and looked down. Below him, 5 shadowy figures slipped into the palace. They wore dark suits that bent the light, making them hard to see. Their blades glowed faintly, and their eyes were covered with shining masks. Assassins. They moved with silence, like hunters trained for this moment. Tom's heart beat fast, but his face stayed calm. He had trained for moments like this. He pulled a small device from his belt. It was a simple tool, a human invention, nothing compared to alien weapons. But in his hands, it became powerful. He tapped it against the vent and dropped it. The device rolled across the floor and made a sharp buzzing noise. The assassins stopped, turning their heads. For 1 second, their silence broke. Tom used that second. He jumped down from the vent, landing between 2 of them. His movements were quick and sharp. With one strike of his elbow, he hit the first assassin's mask, cracking the visor. He spun and kicked the second in the leg, making the giant stumble. The others reacted fast, swinging their glowing blades. Tom ducked and rolled, pulling one of the assassins into the path of another's strike. Sparks flew as blade met armor. Tom did not try to overpower them. He used their size against them, slipping between their heavy moves and forcing them to clash with each other. From the upper balcony, a Zorath guard saw the fight. He shouted for help, and alarms rang across the palace. Heavy boots thundered as soldiers rushed toward the scene. But by the time they arrived, Tom had already taken control. 2 assassins lay unconscious, their masks broken. One was trapped in a narrow corner where Tom had lured him. Another lay tangled in his own weapon cable. Only one remained standing, larger and more skilled than the rest. The last assassin swung his blade with deadly speed. Tom barely dodged, feeling the heat pass close to his face. The assassin struck again and again, but Tom's small size made him harder to hit. Finally, Tom grabbed a fallen mask from the floor and threw it into the assassin's face. In that split second of distraction, Tom lunged forward, twisting the enemy's wrist and forcing the blade to drop. With a sharp move, he pinned the assassin to the ground. The alien guards arrived and surrounded the intruder, their weapons ready. They looked at Tom with shock. Their small human had done what they had not even seen coming. Princess Vera rushed into the hall, her crystal eyes wide with surprise. She saw the broken wall, the fallen assassins, and Tom standing calmly among them. "What happened here?" she demanded. A guard spoke, his voice filled with disbelief. "Princess, the human stopped them. He fought them alone before we could arrive." Vera looked at Tom. Her eyes, once filled with doubt, now showed something new. "You defeated trained assassins," she said softly. Tom shook his head. "I did not defeat them alone. I used the palace itself. I used the shadows, the narrow halls, the weight of their own weapons. They were strong, but they were not ready for someone smaller, someone faster." The guards stared at him with silent respect. They had mocked his size, but now they saw the truth. Vera stepped closer. Her tall figure cast a long shadow over him. She looked into his steady eyes and said, "Perhaps I judged too quickly." Tom gave a small bow. "My duty is not to be judged. My duty is to keep you alive. And I will." The princess fell silent. She turned to her guards. "Take the prisoners to the cells." Double the watch on every gate. As the guards dragged the assassins away, Tom walked back through the corridor. His steps were quiet, but in his mind, he was already thinking ahead. This was only the beginning. If assassins had reached the palace, then a greater plan was in motion. That night, Vera could not sleep easily. She remembered her own words when she first saw him. She had laughed and said he was too small. Now she saw the image of him standing alone against 5 enemies, moving with speed and using his mind. Her pride made her resist, but deep inside, respect began to grow. Tom sat awake in his small chamber, looking at the star map on his screen. He knew the assassins had not come alone. There would be more. And the next test would not be inside the halls, but far beyond them. For now, he had proven that a human's size was not weakness. But the real war was still on its way. The palace of Zorith had never been so restless. After the attack, guards patrolled every corridor, their boots striking the floor in loud rhythm. Crystals on the walls glowed brighter, scanning for danger, while officers barked orders to secure the gates. Yet, in the middle of this storm, one truth was whispered again and again. The human had saved the princess. Princess Vera sat in her throne room, her silver hands resting on the armrests. Her face was calm, but her mind was filled with thoughts. She replayed the fight in her head. She had seen assassins strike before. They were fast, skilled, and merciless. Yet Tom, the small human, had stood against them. He had not been stronger, but he had been quicker, smarter, and sharper. Her advisor Rielan stood at her side. Princess, the guards are unsettled. Some feel shame. Some feel respect. All speak of the human. Vera turned her glowing eyes toward him. He fought well, but he is still only one man. I cannot place the safety of the throne on a single fragile body. Rielan bowed slightly. Perhaps not fragile. Perhaps different. Vera said nothing. She rose from the throne and walked toward the garden. The crystal fountains sprayed silver water, and the glowing trees shimmered like stars. She found Tom standing there, silent as always, watching the shadows between the trees. She stopped a few steps behind him. For a moment, she studied him. His back was straight, his posture calm, yet his head turned slowly from side to side, always alert. You should be resting, Vera said. Tom did not turn. Rest will come when danger is finished. Until then, I watch. Her lips curved in a faint smile. You think danger still hides within these walls? Tom finally looked at her. His eyes were calm, but firm. The assassins were not the end. They were only the first step of something larger. Enemies who strike once will strike again. They will not stop until they reach you. Her crystal eyes narrowed. And you believe you alone can stop them? I do not fight alone, Tom said. Your guards are shields. I am the knife that waits in silence. Together, we can stop what is coming. Vera walked closer, her tall frame casting a shadow over him. She tilted her head, studying his smaller form. When I first saw you, I laughed. You looked too small, too soft. But now I find myself asking a question I never thought I would ask. How can something so small stand against something so great? Tom answered without pride. Because humans have always lived under giants. On our world, there were beasts stronger than us, storms greater than us, enemies larger than us. Yet we survived. Not by being stronger, but by being smarter. That is what I bring to you. For the first time, Princess Vera did not see him as fragile. She saw him as something she did not fully understand. The next day, she called for a meeting in the war chamber. The hall was filled with officers, guards, and advisors. Holograms of the Empire's borders floated above the table, glowing with shifting lights. The attack was not random, Vera said to the room. Our enemies move in secret. They aim for the throne. They aim for me. The guards shifted uneasily. Their pride was wounded that assassins had breached the palace. They promised to double their strength, to guard with heavier weapons, to stand taller and firmer than before. Tom listened silently until Vera turned to him. Human, you who stopped the assassins, speak. What do you see? The room fell silent. Many eyes turned to him, some filled with doubt, some with anger. A human giving orders to Zorith warriors was unthinkable. Yet the princess herself had asked. Tom pointed to the glowing map. The assassins came through weak points in your outer wall. That means the enemy studied you carefully. They will not stop there. They will come in greater numbers, not to test, but to strike. If you meet them head-on, you will fight on their terms. You must fight on yours. One officer scoffed. What does a small human know of war? We have fought for centuries. Tom's voice stayed calm. And yet 5 assassins entered your palace. If you had fought them, the princess might not be alive. I do not speak as a soldier of size. I speak as a survivor. And survival means using more than strength. It means using the ground, the shadows, the traps, and the mind. The room fell into murmurs. Some agreed. Some shook their heads. Vera raised her hand for silence. Her glowing eyes studied Tom. She could see the anger in her guards, but she also saw the truth in his words. Let him continue, she commanded. Tom stepped closer to the map. He pointed to the narrow corridors of the palace. Here, you are too large to move quickly. But I can. Here, enemies will not expect small steps. They expect giants. We must turn what they see as weakness into strength. The guards muttered again, but this time their voices carried less doubt. His words made sense even if their pride resisted. After the meeting, Vera walked beside Tom in the quiet hall. You speak boldly to my people, she said. I speak only what I see, Tom replied. Her eyes softened for a moment. Perhaps I misjudged you. Perhaps there is more strength in you than I first believed. Tom bowed his head slightly. Strength is not in muscle alone. It is in will. And my will is to protect you. Vera's steps slowed. She looked down at him, her tall figure towering, yet for the first time she did not see him as small. She saw him as a shield made of mind and spirit. That night, she stood on her balcony, gazing at the stars. She remembered her own words when he arrived. She had laughed at him, mocked his size. Now those words echoed in her mind like a lesson. Far above the palace, hidden in the dark of broken asteroids, enemy ships gathered in silence. Their leaders watched the station and prepared their next move. The first test had failed, but the war was only beginning. The days after the attack were filled with tension. The palace no longer felt safe, even with hundreds of tall guards patrolling every corner. Princess Vera sensed fear in her people, though they tried to hide it behind proud faces. For the first time, she found her eyes searching for the human who once seemed unworthy. She looked for Tom, the small bodyguard she had once laughed at. Tom did not waste time. He studied the palace like a hunter studying the forest. Every hallway, every door, every shadow was marked in his memory. He trained quietly, moving through the palace at night, setting small traps and alarms that only he knew how to use. He spoke little, but his actions spoke loudly to those who watched. One morning, Tom asked to speak before the guard captains. They gathered in the war chamber, their large bodies filling the room like pillars. Some still looked at him with doubt, but after the last attack, none dared laugh. Tom pointed to a glowing map of the station. "Your strength is unmatched in battle," he began, "but the enemy will not fight you in open fields. They will not meet you where you are strongest. They will come like shadows, like whispers, like knives in the dark. To stop them, we must think differently." A captain frowned. "Differently? We have always fought with strength. That is the Zorith way." Tom nodded. "And that is why your enemies do not face you directly. They know you are too strong. They choose weakness to strike at you. They choose shadows. If you fight shadows with size, you lose. If you fight shadows with light, you win." The room grew quiet. His words were simple, yet they cut through pride. Princess Vera, standing at the head of the table, asked, "What do you suggest, human?" Tom pointed to the palace gates. "Here, you need speed more than size. Station smaller guards or drones that can move quickly. At the towers, you need hidden eyes, not heavy weapons. Place scouts where enemies do not expect them. And in these corridors," he pointed to the narrow passages, "you need traps. Not heavy machines, but simple tools that force enemies into your strength." The guards looked at each other. Some frowned, but others nodded slowly. Vera's eyes stayed on Tom. She could see how his mind worked like a web, weaving connections that none of her proud warriors had thought of. "Do it," she ordered. "Follow his plan." The captains bowed, though some did so with stiff pride. Tom's respect was growing, but not all hearts were willing to admit it. Over the next days, Tom worked with the guards. At first, they resisted, thinking his traps too simple. But when he showed them how a thin wire across a hall could trip even the fastest intruder, they began to listen. When he showed them how a small reflective crystal could signal danger from far away, they grew curious. When he set up a practice ambush that caught 3 guards before they even drew their weapons, they grew silent. Slowly, respect replaced doubt. One evening, Princess Vera walked into the training yard. She saw her mighty guards crouched low, crawling through narrow paths Tom had built for them. She saw them learning to move with less noise, learning to use speed as well as strength. And at the center of it, Tom gave calm instructions, his voice steady but firm. She stepped closer. "You train my warriors as if they were your own," she said. Tom turned, giving a short bow. "They are not mine, but their strength is mine to use. If they are ready, then you are safe." Her crystal eyes studied him. "When you first came, I believed you unfit to stand here. Yet now I see my guards listening to you. Even Crawl, who mocked you most, now follows your words." Tom glanced at Crawl, who was climbing through a practice tunnel. "He is strong. With the right guidance, his strength is twice as useful." Vera nodded slowly. For the first time, her pride bent toward admiration. That night, as the palace rested, Tom walked the halls as usual. Princess Vera joined him, surprising him with her quiet steps. She walked beside him, her tall figure towering over his smaller frame. "Tell me, human," she said softly, "why do you risk yourself for me? I mocked you when you came. I doubted you. Yet you serve without anger." Tom looked at her calmly. "Because my duty is not for pride. My duty is for life." You are the life I must protect. That is enough. Her eyes softened. Most of my guards serve for honor. You serve for duty. Perhaps that is why you succeed where they fail. Tom gave a small nod but said no more. His eyes stayed on the shadows. Far above the station, the enemy fleet gathered in silence. Dozens of dark ships floated like predators in the deep sky. Their leader, cloaked in black armor, watched the palace through distant sensors. The failed assassins had been only the beginning. Now a larger strike was planned. Inside the palace, Tom sensed the storm. He could not see the ships yet, but his instincts told him the quiet would not last. When Princess Vera returned to her chamber, she looked once more at Tom before stepping inside. She remembered her own words from the first day. You are too small to be my bodyguard. Those words now felt heavy, almost foolish. She whispered to herself, perhaps small is not weakness. Perhaps small is strength unseen. And in that moment, she knew. Respect had taken root, not just in her guards, but in her own heart. The real war had not yet begun, but when it did, she would trust the human at her side. The calm before the storm ended with a deep alarm that shook the palace walls. Red lights flashed across the corridors, and the ground vibrated with the sound of distant explosions. The Zorith guards rushed to their stations, their armor glowing as they prepared for battle. Above the palace, the night sky burned with fire. Enemy ships had arrived. Princess Vera stood in the war chamber, her tall frame tense as she watched the hologram of the station. Dozens of dark enemy vessels surrounded them. They were larger than the patrol ships of the Zorith, built for speed and destruction. The officers shouted reports, but their voices were filled with panic. Tom entered the chamber, his steps quick but steady. His face showed no fear, only focus. He looked at the map, then at the guards, then finally at the princess. They are not here to scare you, Tom said. They are here to finish what the assassins failed to do. They want you dead. Vera's eyes narrowed. Then we will fight them. Our ships will crush them. Tom shook his head. Not if you meet them head-on. They are too fast, too spread out. If you fight them by their plan, you will lose. The guards frowned, but Vera lifted her hand for silence. Then what do you suggest, human? Tom pointed to the map. We use the station itself as a weapon. These narrow fields, these asteroid shadows, these hidden vents. They think they face giants, but they will face the mind of a human. Vera stared at him for a moment, then nodded. Give your orders. The officers looked shocked. A human leading the defense was unthinkable. Yet the princess's voice silenced them. Tom moved quickly. Pull back the heavy ships. Make them look weak. When the enemy chases, split them into small groups. Use the asteroids to block their line of fire. Place your fastest patrols here and here. He tapped the glowing map. Do not fight with size. Fight with speed. Trap them where they cannot escape. The plan was strange to the Zorith, but they obeyed. For the first time, they trusted the small human's strange way of thinking. Moments later, the battle began. The dark enemy ships rained fire on the station, but the Zorith patrols pulled back just as Tom had said. The enemy thought they were retreating. They chased with pride, splitting their formation. Tom watched from the command deck, his eyes fixed on the glowing screens. Now, he whispered. The patrols turned suddenly, slipping behind asteroids. Hidden cannons lit up, blasting the enemy from the side. Explosions filled the sky as several ships broke apart. The enemy was caught by surprise. In the palace, the guards cheered, but Tom raised his hand. "Do not celebrate yet. This is only the first wave." He was right. More enemy ships appeared, larger and heavier, their guns tearing through the shields of the station. They were not tricked so easily. They pushed forward, closer and closer to the palace itself. "Princess," Tom said quickly, "they will send boarding forces. They will try to take you alive. We must prepare the inner halls." Vera nodded. "Do what you must. I will not be taken." Tom moved through the palace with speed, setting his traps. Thin wires across dark halls, hidden alarms in the gardens, reflective crystals at the windows. He guided the guards, telling them where to wait and when to strike. Soon the walls shook again as enemy boarding ships landed. The palace doors burst open, and enemy soldiers stormed inside. They were tall, armored, and filled with rage. The Zorith guards roared and clashed with them, their heavy blades meeting in a storm of sparks. But in the chaos, Tom's traps worked. Enemies stumbled over wires, their lines broke in the narrow corridors, their numbers scattered by sudden alarms that confused their advance. Tom himself moved like a shadow, striking from behind, pulling enemies into traps, and guiding guards to strike where it mattered most. His small size let him slip through spaces the enemies ignored, turning their focus against them. At one moment, Princess Vera herself stood in danger. A large enemy warrior broke through the guard line and charged toward her. His blade glowed with fire, raised high for the strike. Tom appeared from the side, moving faster than anyone expected. He grabbed a loose chain from the wall and swung it around the enemy's arm, pulling with all his strength. The warrior stumbled, his strike missing the princess by inches. Before he could recover, Vera struck him with her own blade, sending him crashing to the floor. She turned to Tom, breathing hard. "You saved me again." Tom nodded. "I told you, Princess. My size is not weakness. It is my weapon." The battle raged for hours. The station shook under fire, the halls filled with smoke and shouts, but slowly the tide began to turn. The enemy, expecting an easy victory, found themselves trapped again and again. Their ships fell to ambushes. Their soldiers were defeated in halls designed against them. When the last enemy vessel pulled back into the dark, the palace stood scarred but unbroken. The Zorith guards raised their weapons in victory, their voices echoing across the station. In the war chamber, Princess Vera stood before her people. She raised her arm and pointed to Tom, who stood quietly at her side. "This human has shown us strength that we did not see," she declared. "He is small in body, but greater in will. Without him, we would have fallen. With him, we still stand." The guards cheered, not with laughter this time, but with respect. Even Kral, once his loudest doubter, bowed his head toward Tom. Tom did not smile or raise his hands. He only said, "The war is not finished. They will return. We must be ready." Princess Vera looked at him, her crystal eyes shining. "Then we will be ready. Together." The palace was safe for now, but in the dark of space, the enemy gathered once more. Their pride was wounded, their plans broken, but their anger was only growing. The dark sky above the Zorith station was filled with enemy ships, far greater in number than before. The first attack had failed, and now the enemy came with fury, their weapons charged and their purpose clear. They had learned from their mistakes, but so had the defenders. The station braced for its greatest test. Princess Vera stood on the command balcony, her silver armor reflecting the light of the distant stars. Around her, the officers and guards moved with disciplined energy, following Tom's orders to the letter. The station hummed with readiness. Tom stood at her side, scanning the fleet through the holographic map. His small human frame seemed almost delicate compared to the towering Zorith beside him, yet his eyes burned with focus. "They will attack in waves," he said. "Not just from the front, but from every shadow they can find. If we meet them with strength alone, we will fall. We must use every trick, every narrow path, every trap we have." Vera nodded. "Then we follow your plan. Lead us, human." Tom felt the weight of her trust. For the first time, the princess had placed her life completely in his hands. He did not falter. "All guards, follow my lead. Stay alert, move fast, and do not fight where they expect. Turn their pride against them." The enemy ships opened fire, blasting the station with beams of energy. Explosions shook the walls, and alarms blared across the corridors. The Zorith ships moved as Tom had instructed, pretending to retreat, drawing the enemy into narrow asteroid fields. At first, the enemy seemed confident. They believed their numbers and strength would overwhelm the station. But then the traps worked. Hidden turrets fired from angles the enemy had not expected. Mines scattered across asteroid shadows forced ships to break formation. Enemy leaders shouted orders, frustrated as their fleet began to crumble. Inside the palace, enemy boarding teams dropped into the halls. They were taller and stronger than ever, but they were slower, less aware of the traps Tom had set. They stumbled over wires, were caught by hidden nets, and collided with each other in narrow corridors. Tom moved through the chaos, guiding guards, pulling enemies into ambushes, and striking with precision where speed mattered more than size. One enemy warrior reached the inner chamber where Vera stood. He raised his weapon high, intending to strike the princess. Tom appeared from a side corridor, faster than any Zorith could move. He grabbed the enemy's arm, twisting it, and sent the warrior crashing into a wall. The guards behind him secured the intruder while the princess remained safe. Vera's eyes widened. "Once again, you have saved me." Tom shook his head slightly. "Not me. We. Every guard, every trap, every plan, it works together. The station fights as one." Hours passed like minutes. The enemy pressed on, but the strategy worked. Each wave was smaller after the first. The remaining ships, frustrated and disorganized, began to retreat. The final group of boarding warriors, expecting an easy victory, found themselves trapped in a hall too narrow for their size. One by one, they fell, captured or defeated by the combined effort of Zorith's strength and Tom's cunning. At last, silence fell. The station was battered, but unbroken. The enemy had fled, defeated and humiliated. Princess Vera stepped forward, her tall frame shining under the palace lights. She raised her arms, calling the attention of all guards and officers. "Today, we have seen strength in a way we never understood. This human, once too small to guard me, has proven that size is not the measure of power. His mind, his courage, and his will have saved us all." The guards cheered, their voices echoing through the halls. Even Kral, once loud with doubt, bowed deeply to Tom. The officers nodded with respect. Tom, small in body but large in spirit, stood quietly. He did not raise his arms or claim glory. His duty had been done. Vera approached him, her glowing eyes meeting his calm gaze. "I was wrong when I first saw you. You are not too small to protect me. You are the greatest protector I have ever known." Tom gave a small bow. "My duty is to protect, Princess. That is all I need to be." She smiled, her respect deep and genuine. You have taught us something more than battle. You have taught us that intelligence, courage, and careful thought are as strong as any weapon. The stars will remember this day, not for the strength of our arms, but for the strength of a human spirit." Tom felt no pride, only a quiet satisfaction. He had proven humanity's place among the stars. The palace slowly returned to peace. The walls were repaired, the patrols resumed, and life returned to the station. But the memory of the battle stayed with everyone, especially with Princess Vera. She often looked at Tom with new eyes, understanding now that a bodyguard's value was not in size, but in loyalty, intelligence, and courage. Days later, the Council of the Zorith Empire convened. They praised the human who had defended the princess. They spoke of his tactics, his bravery, and his calm under pressure. Tom's name became known across the empire, not as a small human, but as a protector unmatched in skill and heart. Vera, standing at her balcony, watched the stars once more. She remembered the first day she had laughed at him, calling him too small. Now she shook her head with a smile. "Perhaps small is the greatest strength," she whispered. Tom continued his patrols, silent as ever, always aware, always ready. He knew the galaxy was vast and danger could return at any moment. Yet now, he stood not just as a bodyguard, but as a symbol. A symbol that size does not define courage, that determination can outweigh strength, and that humanity's spirit was a force to be reckoned with. The station thrived, the princess ruled wisely, and the empire knew peace for the first time in many years. And in every shadow, every corridor, and every patrol, Tom was there, small in body, yet the greatest protector the stars had ever seen. The galaxy had learned the truth. Humans may be small, but their courage and mind were limitless. Princess Vera placed a hand on Tom's shoulder. "You are my protector, not because of your size, but because of your heart," she said. Tom nodded silently, ready for whatever challenge the stars might bring next. He had proven himself, not for glory, but because that was what humans did. They survived, they adapted, and they thrived. And so, the human who was once too small to be a bodyguard became the legend that the Zorith Empire would never forget.